Careful, maestro, you might trip over your own stick. The words echoed off the auditorium's bare walls, sharp and mocking. Trent Waller, 17, leaned forward from the front row, his football resting against one knee, the white laces catching the stage light. A couple of teammates laughed under their breath, the sound bouncing in the empty space like a bad note. On stage, Malik Carter, 16, didn't move. His yellow hoodie glowed under the single spotlight, his white cane angled neatly against the old grand piano. His fingertips grazed the keys, reading their texture like braille, while every smirk in the dark seemed to dare him to play. The auditorium held its breath the way a sea holds a wreck, quiet, dark, and heavy with memory. Dust floated in the stage lights like slow snow, and the old Steinway's ivory keys wore little scars that told stories of prom ballads and faculty recitals. Malik Carter stood with one palm spread across the cool lid, his white cane angled against his leg. Behind him, a sneaker squeaked and someone tisked the hollow shaft of his cane as if it were a toy baton. He didn't turn. He just found middle C by the faintest dip in the key and the air it released when he pressed it, the thinnest string hum, pure as dawn over water. Then he laid down another note and the auditorium's silence broke into a wind, into a choir, into a tide that lifted the smirk from someone's mouth without ever touching it. "Yo, what is he?" a voice started, and then the sound swallowed the rest. Malik woke to the smell of coffee and laundry soap and the faint pleasant ache of piano in his fingers. The window in their apartment caught the hum of the freeway blocks away and turned it into a long low note that sounded like home. His mother, Denise, moved through the kitchen with slippered certainty, her bracelets whispering a quick beat as she poured. The kettle puffed. The radio murmured the weather. Malik sank into the chair, running thumbs over the braille dots on his phone case. "You're up early," Denise said, nudging his bowl of oatmeal nearer with a soft scrape on the table. "First day back. Thought I'd make it less cruel." "Nothing makes first days less cruel," Malik said, smiling into his spoon. "But the coffee aroma helps. You and your fancy words." She squeezed his shoulder. "I put your yellow hoodie on the chair. Catches the sun real good. You look like a 100-watt bulb in that thing." He pictured her smile. He never ran out of ways to picture his mother's smile. It sounded like the tiny clinks of her spoon against the mug, felt like the warmth at his temple when she kissed his hair. He let the sounds roll into each other, the neighbor's dog collar chinging like sleigh bells, the bus exhaling at the curb, distant laughter under the hallway's fluorescent hum. He saw a map made of sound, the city as an orchestra waiting for its downbeat. "You sure about this audition?" Denise asked softly. "Not sure." Malik wiped his mouth and stood, tracing the counter to the sink. "But certain." "That's my boy," she said, and he loved how she put weight on my, not to own him but to anchor him. On the bus, Malik sat near the middle, his cane vertical like a metronome against his knee. The morning crowd smelled of shampoo and pencil shavings and the metallic tang of pocket change. He counted his stops by the three-tone chime from the old speaker over the driver's head. The fourth stop had a tinny ring that buzzed a little at the end, the city's off-key E. He noted it like a musician boldly circling a favorite passage. The bus groaned to a halt at Lincoln High. Voices leapt like sparrows. Someone thumped a football against a palm, thup, 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 near the steps. He felt for the curb with his cane tip, found concrete, and stepped down. "Careful, maestro," a voice drawled, syrupy with sarcasm. "Don't want you to scratch the hardwood with your magic stick." Trent Waller's voice carried that brand of easy confidence kids adopt when they've been told they're special since Pop Warner. Malik didn't need sight to know Trent had a perfect haircut and a smile that worked like a hall pass. He angled his face toward the voice. "Good morning to you too," Malik said, letting it glance off him. "Watch your ball. Sounds like it's got too much air." "What, you can hear that dude thinks he's a bat." Another chuckle chimed in from the crew, loyal satellites orbiting the star. Jorge appeared at Malik's elbow like a cymbal crash. "Ignore the taxidermy exhibit," Jorge said cheerfully. "Come on, man." They put a new flyer on the band hall door. They navigated the corridor together. Jorge's backpack squeaked with every step. Malik had told him it sounded like a mouse in corduroys, and now Jorge made a game of it. In the band room, the air cooled. It had the peculiar clean smell of brass polish and old sheet music. Mr. Halvorson, the conductor, set pencils in a perfect parallel row on his music stand. He was tall and pale and precise, with a beard that looked like it needed its own conductor's cue. His chair squeaked once when he sat, high pitch, tired spring. Malik knew that squeak the way most people recognized shoes. Carter, Halvorsen said. Jorge. Find your places. The spring showcase editions are listed on the board. Jorge read it out loud. Piano soloists at 3:15 Friday, orchestra accompaniment provided if approved by conductor. City Youth Concert preliminary recordings due next week. He whistled. That's the big one. I want that, Malik said. Halvorsen cleared his throat. Malik, he began, and Malik heard the caution. We'll need to consider how you'll follow tempo changes and conductor cues. Without visual contact, it's challenging. I count breath, Malik answered. I feel the room. I can cue myself. Music is collaborative, Halvorsen said mildly. We'll discuss at rehearsal. Jorge muttered, translation he thinks you can't. Malik felt heat rise in his cheeks but kept his voice even. Then I'll let him hear. He found his way to the corner piano, running fingers under the fallboard to find the lift notch, feeling where the varnish was worn smooth by decades of hands. He played a G low velvet, and climbed a scale that flared at the top like a thrown ribbon. He pressed one pedal, then the other, mapping the resistance, the creak. From the doorway came a hissed laugh. He's like a cat pawing at a window, someone whispered. He ignored it, but the whisper stuck like a burr. After lunch, Malik slipped into the small practice room off the auditorium. The space collected sound like a pocket collects pennies, small scattered clangs that added up. The vent rattled in a pattern, ch-ch-ch, like impatient strings. A distant locker banged low, metallic drum. He picked notes to match the noises, then inverted them, making a melody that rode on top of the school's haphazard rhythm. A symphony wasn't just violins and oboes. It was the bell and the clatter and the scrape all telling the truth at once. He pressed voice memos on his phone. Theme sketch, he said. Hallway brass version. He hummed, then played, then laughed at himself, riffing. The practice room smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner. The plastic stool stuck a little to the backs of his legs. The door swung open. Air moved. Malik lifted his head. Don't mind us, a voice said, Trent's again. We're just, hey, nice stick. Fingers tapped his cane near the tip. Tap, tap, tap. Please don't touch that, Malik said, gentler than he felt. It's not a toy. Relax, maestro, another said, and a hand lifted the cane. Malik stood too fast, knee-banging the bench. His palm went flat against the piano to orient himself, skin stinging. Give it back, he said, heart speeding. Catch. A whoop, then silence, then the hollow clatter of the cane skittering across the floor, too far. Malik stepped and his shoe slid. He grabbed at air, found only more air, and went down hard, cheek scraping the carpet. The smell of dusty fibers filled his nose, dry and raw. Trent! Someone hissed, a sharp slice of a whisper. Teacher! Footsteps scattered. Another pair approached, hard heels, unhurried. A hand touched his shoulder. Malik, you okay? It was Ms. Whitaker from English. She helped him sit. Your cane's here, she said, pressing it into his palm. Who did this? Malik swallowed. The burn on his cheek sparkled like electricity. I didn't see. She huffed, at herself or them, he wasn't sure. Come by my room after last period, she said. We'll set up an incident report. He nodded, mouth dry. When she left, he stayed on the floor a second longer than he needed to, hearing his breath in the tiny room, hearing his pulse thud against his ear. Later, as he sat at the base of the backstage curtain, he heard it, someone at the far side of the stage, alone drumming. Not on a drum kit. On the wooden back of a chair, palms and fingertips, shifting between 4s and 7s, ghosting the offbeats. The timing was precise. Good. Malik leaned against the curtain seam and let the patterns tuck themselves into his memory, into the piece he was building. He didn't move. He didn't announce himself. He just listened until the sound ended with a sharp intake of breath and the jingle of keys. He smiled, barely. Everyone had something they hid. At night, Malik mapped the city by sound into a composition no one had taught him to write. In the alley behind their building, the radiator hiss in the winter hallway he coupled with the high violin part in his head. The The subway 2 blocks over, low and thrumming, became cellos. The elevator's sleepy ding was a trumpet, bright and brassy. He stood by the window and hummed into his phone, taking notes into the dark. Denise peeked in. "You are going to wear out that microphone." "Just borrowing it," he said, grinning. She came in and sat on the bed. "Got a text from Ms. Whitaker," she said carefully. "She said you took a fall today." "I tripped," he lied. Then sighed. "They took the cane, Mom. It was quick. I'm okay." Silence hung between them like a curtain. Denise's bracelets clinked as she rubbed her hands together. "I hate that you have to be braver than other kids just to walk down a hall," she said. "But I also know you're strong like that piano you were born to play." "We need to pay an entry fee for the city competition," he said, changing the subject badly. "And if I make finals, there's travel to Riverfront Hall." Denise hesitated only a heartbeat. "We'll figure it out," she said. "Might be beans and rice for a while, but dreams eat money. I'll pick up a double at the clinic this weekend." He shook his head. "I can skip it." She snapped her fingers. One sharp crack. "No, sir. You fought to see the world in a way they can't. You don't skip. We find a way." He felt the truth of her words settle inside him like a weight on a seesaw, a balancing weight, not a burden. He nodded. "Okay." The next day at school, Mr. Halvorson cornered him after rehearsal, his voice a velvet blade. "Malik, I overheard your experiments yesterday. You have an ear." He paused. "But the youth concert requires strict adherence to score. Are you able to manage a standard symphonic reduction without notation?" "I can," Malik said. "I memorize. I build it from sound. If you give me the structure, I'll rebuild it." Halvorson fiddled with his pencils. They clicked like teeth. "I have to be careful," he said. "Last year's mishap, we started a movement in the wrong tempo because a student misread, and he stopped, swallowing the rest. It reflected on me." "So you're scared," Malik said, not unkindly. "Responsible," Halvorson said, too quickly. Malik nodded. "I'm scared too. But if we decide based on fear, the room gets smaller." A long breath. "Submit a recording," Halvorson said finally. "Let me hear. Then we'll talk." Jorge declared himself head of production. "I got a throwback USB mic from my cousin and a laptop that heats a room in winter," he said. "We can do this. We'll make it sound like Abbey Road, if Abbey Road had roaches." They set up in the auditorium that evening. The empty seats smelled like dust and gum wrappers. Jorge taped a line on the stage so Malik wouldn't drift. "2 steps back and you'll be kissing the timpani," he warned. They were still adjusting the mic when footsteps crossed the stage. Cleaner steps. Malik felt the air move differently around someone who carried himself like he owned a space. "What are you doing?" Trent asked. "Recording," Jorge said. "Which you're interrupting." Trent didn't answer. Fabric rustled as he shifted. "Look, about yesterday," he said, voice lower. "That got out of hand." Jorge started to say something sharp, but Malik lifted a hand. "I don't need an apology," Malik said. "I need my cane not to be a toy." Yeah." Trent exhaled. "I fixed the grip," he blurted, as if he'd meant to say it all along. "It had this tear. I wrapped it. Sports tape. Won't slip now." He pressed the cane back, handle warm from his hand. Malik's fingers found the rougher texture where the tape overlapped. It felt like a promise. "Thanks," he said, startled at how much it meant. Trent's keys chirped. "I heard you last night," Malik said, casually. "On the chair. 7s over 4s. You got hands." Trent went defensive. "I don't." "You're good," Malik said simply. "Come help me track percussion. No kit. Just the stage, your shoes, the inside of a music stand. I wrote parts that need muscle." Silence roamed the stage a moment, sniffing. "Why would you?" "Because you like it," Malik said. "And because this isn't just mine." A small laugh. The careful kind Trent probably hadn't used much. "You're weird," he said. "Fine. 15 minutes. If coach calls, I'm out." The three of them fell into a rhythm that made time feel bendy. Jorge counted them in. Malik set the main theme, strong and aching, and Trent threaded in syncopation with knuckles, palms, a soft heel tap that landed like distant thunder. Malik talked through shapes instead of notes. "Breathe with me," he said. "In 2, out 2. Feel the space between the exhale and the next inhale, that's where the next hit goes." Trent puffed a laugh. "You count air." "Always," Malik said. "Air tells the truth." They got a take that made Jorge whoop. "If this doesn't get you into the youth concert, the judges are stalebred," he said, wiping sweat from his neck with his shirt. Trent cleared his throat. My dad's picking me up," he said. "He, you know, thinks drums are a hobby until after football pays for college." He stopped. "Don't say anything." "I don't see anything," Malik deadpanned, and they all laughed, harder than the joke earned. The rumor hit the next day like a cold draft. Malik had auto-tuned his piano, whatever that meant. A trumpet player named Leah, who'd been gunning for the same audition slot, dropped it over lunch like a salt shaker, casual and precise. Mr. Halvorson, correcting posture at the clarinet row, pretended not to hear but tightened like a rope. The principal, Ms. Whitaker, stepped in. "To clear the air," she announced, "we'll hold a live audition Friday after school. 1 take, no backing tracks, no studio magic, whatever that is." Her voice smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Open to faculty to observe." Jorge groaned. "Great. A courtroom." "Good," Malik said, surprising himself. "Let's do it." On Thursday, they ran dress rehearsal for the spring showcase. Technical lemon. The monitor Halvorson used to cue the timer went dark. The click track piped for the percussion ensemble died with a sad little bloop. Halvorson froze, his gestures clipping small. Eyes darted even though Malik couldn't see them. He felt it, the same way he felt weather turn, pressure changing against his skin. "We can't," Halvorson started. "We can," Malik said. He stepped up to the podium's edge, anchoring toes on the tape line Jorge had placed days before. "Breathe with me," he said, voice stronger than he felt. "In 2, out 2, he counted off quietly, then louder, and gave a small rock of his torso that any player could feel even without consent to follow. "Strings, you're the radiator. Warm. Trombones, subway underfoot. Don't steal the sunlight. Woodwinds, be windows. Open and shut. You feel it." A violinist giggled and then stilled. And then, against every rule and every expectation, they followed. Malik drove them through his piece like he'd been born in that spot. He knew where the climaxes lived because he'd pulled them from the air. He knew how long the silence between movements was because he'd learned silence by necessity. At the final chord, the band room let out a sound that began as a breath and became applause. Halvorson put a hand over his beard as if it might fly away. "How," he said, then stopped. "I see." Leah wasn't so moved. "Without the pianist," she said to a friend in a stage whisper, "that mess falls apart. He's a metronome, not a musician." Malik let it land and fall. He'd learned early which arrows had poison and which were hollow. That night, on the school's flat roof, orange sodium lamps washed everything in a false sunset. Jorge balanced his phone on a shoe as a tripod and replayed their rehearsal recording. "Dude," he breathed. "Bro. Bruh. I am out of synonyms." Trent sat cross-legged, still in practice jersey, helmet beside him. He drummed on the plastic shell, gentle. "Coach says rhythm's only good if it's clock management," he said. "He wants my world to count in yards." "My world counts in sticks too, I guess." "Drumsticks," Jorge offered. "Cane sticks," Malik added. "It's all keeping time." Trent knocked lightly on Malik's cane handle. "Sorry again," he said. He looked for a word, then found it and hated it. Malik could hear the wince in his breath. "Mean." "You were scared," Malik said. "You thought making me small would keep you big." He lifted his face so the light painted one side in warmth and left the other cool. "I don't want your apology. I want your rhythm." Trent nodded once. "You got it." Friday bloomed sharp and blue. The auditorium was half full of students sniffing drama and teachers pretending they hadn't left papers ungraded for the show. Denise took a seat near the aisle, hand tight on her purse. Ms. Whitaker stood with a clipboard. Mr. Halvorson had mere pencils, but his posture had softened by a fraction. Malik stood where he'd stood in the opening of this story. He ran a thumb along the piano bench's seam. He placed his cane leaning against the piano leg and touched the keys lightly, as if greeting an old friend. "Whenever you're ready, Mr. Carter," Ms. Whitaker said. He didn't announce the piece. It had a title in his head, Where the Light Is, but titles had to earn themselves. He let the first chord bloom like a sun through a fog. The second chord shifted the light onto moving water. His left hand rolled a figure that sounded like the subway's low growl riding rails until it became a bass motive, careful and patient. Right hand a window crack, light in, a thin high melody that widened into a ribbon. He used the sustain pedal to paint air and the una corda to whisper. And then, here came the thing he'd promised himself he'd attempt and never done in public. He made the piano wider than itself. He struck a low cluster, muted with his palm, to mimic the timpani's thud. He fluttered a tremolo high up like breath through a flute. He dropped the melody into a resonant middle register and let it sit there like a year-stamped truth. The piano, old and a little out of tune in the far octaves, repaid him with warmth, woolly at the bottom, glass at the top. He coaxed both. From the wings, Trent added a heartbeat heel to wood, fingertips brushing the inside of a metal music stand in whispers, a soft palm on chest to make a muffled drum. It was subtle, but it grounded the piece, like a pulse in a wrist under a cuff. In the last movement, Malik did something both petty and perfect. He took the rhythm of the taps they'd mocked on his cane that day, tap, 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 and he fed it through a grinder, stretching it, inverting it, dressing it in harmony until it came out transformed and dignified. He didn't announce it, didn't wink at anyone. He just reclaimed it. Silence landed at the end like a soft coat over shoulders. It lasted a full 10 seconds, then 20. Denise's quiet sob counted the beats. Jorge drew in his breath and forgot to let it out. Somewhere, Leah swallowed. Halvorsen made a sound like someone who had been holding up a wall and realized the wall could stand on its own. And then the room burst. It wasn't the hungry hoot of pep rallies. It was a round sound, full. It lifted Malik off the bench in its force. He blinked into nothing and saw everything. Mr. Halvorsen reached him first. "I was wrong," he said without preamble. The words trembled slightly, like a bow on a string. "Not about the challenge, about your capacity to meet it. If you'll allow, I would be honored to help arrange this for the youth concert." "Thank you," Malik said, voice small because everything inside him suddenly wasn't. Ms. Whitaker scribbled, then laughed at herself and put the pen away. "You don't need this. Just, yes. We'll send your file. Today." Leah drifted forward and stopped just shy of the stage. "Hey," she said. I misjudged you." The apology stuck in her throat like a dry cracker. "You need a trumpet line. I play soft too." "Everyone thinks brass has one volume," Malik said, smiling. "Help me find the whisper." From the back, someone clapped slowly and deliberately. Trent's father. Malik knew it without seeing because the steps were older but carried the same outline as Trent's. He didn't speak. He just made the kind of applause that says "I get it now." Afterward, in the hallway, the noise was a soft riot. A freshman asked if he could touch the cane, like respectfully, just to know what it feels like to need one thing so much. Malik guided his hand to the wrapped grip and told him about how it felt like holding onto time. Denise hugged him so tight he burped. "My boy," she murmured into his hair. "My brave boy." "I was terrified," he confessed. "I counted breaths." "You always did," she said. "First day you decided the world was still yours, you did it on a breath." They submitted the performance and got the reply on Monday finalist. The Riverside Symphony would work with the winner to present an arranged version of their piece on the big stage. Denise pressed the email to her heart like a letter from a faraway lover. Jorge filmed everything, narrating in a terrible nature documentary voice, observed the rare and magnificent moment. The weeks that followed became a montage with sweat. After school, Malik worked with Mr. Halvorsen in his cramped office, unpacking the piece into parts. "Here," Halvorsen said, tapping Malik's hand lightly so he'd know which page they discussed. "When you say subway, I think tuba and basses. But maybe also contrabassoon to get that asphalt rattle." "Oboe for the window crack," Malik suggested. "And a clarinet to answer," Halvorsen said, surprising himself with a grin. Trent practiced auxiliary percussion on instruments he'd never noticed before: temple blocks, triangles, even a thundersheet that he fell in love with and had to be gently separated from. Restraint, Malik teased. A storm is scariest when it holds just offshore. Leah showed up with a mute and learned to play a trumpet line that sounded like a confession. She and Malik argued about phrasing like siblings who secretly admired each other. "Less sparkle," he said once. "More like you're sorry for something you didn't do. That kind of sorry." "I know that sorry," she said quietly, and played exactly the note he meant. One afternoon, Malik sat across from Mr. Halvorson, and the older man cleared his throat. "I need to say a thing that isn't about music," he said. "A few years ago I miscounted, started a concert movement too slow. My first cellist followed me down that hole. The kids were fine, but I received a letter afterward from a parent that started with 'Some people shouldn't be leaders.'" He paused. "I have been careful ever since, too careful. I projected that onto you, and I was wrong to make you carry my fear." "I can carry it," Malik said. "I'm strong." He smiled. "But I prefer carrying my own." Halvorson's chuckle sounded like a bow settling on its string. "Then I'll carry stands and scores and leave the air to you." The night before the Riverside performance, the three boys, Malik, Jorge, and Trent, climbed to the roof again. The city yawned lights. Somewhere a siren Dopplered past, an E to AB and back. The wind pressed Malik's hoodie to his arms, turning him into a sail. "Scared?" Jorge asked. "Responsible," Malik said, and smiled to himself at the borrowed word. Trent tapped a rhythm against the HVAC housing. "Coach said he heard about the concert. He's bringing the team in jackets to look respectable. It's the first time he's ever called music part of my training." He set the helmet between them, open side up. "I don't think he knows that makes me want to cry." "You can," Malik said. "On the inside of the helmet. It's absorbent." Jorge snorted. The moment stretched and warmed. They sat in it. The Riverside Symphony's hall was more echo than room, or so it felt when they first walked in. Malik could tell by the way his cane click returned to him, fast but softened, like the space was designed to make sound curl back around and hug you. The chairs smelled faintly like varnish and human hope. He stood at center stage during soundcheck and felt the shape of it in his bones. A woman with clipped steps and a low alto introduced herself as Maestro Eliza Chun. "I've heard the recording," she said. "We'll honor the core and paint around it. Don't worry about conducting. That's on me. Your job is to breathe." "That I can do," Malik said, lips almost a smile. Backstage, Denise fussed with his collar. Her fingers trembled, bracelets clinking. "I didn't sleep," she admitted. "Me neither," he said. "It's okay. We'll sleep after 5 minutes and an eternity." 5 minutes and an eternity, she repeated. Sounds like church. The performance wasn't perfect, but it was true. That mattered more. The cellos came in a hair late after one pause, then made the warmth of that arrival part of the story. Trent missed a soft shoulder tap and recovered by turning the miss into a held breath, and the audience leaned in. Leah's muted trumpet whispered like she had secrets and then confessed one. When Malik reached the final movement, the room felt like a lung held open. He quoted the mockery rhythm again, not as revenge anymore but as a reminder that everything can be turned. Maestro Chun brought the orchestra down to almost nothing. Malik let the last chord feather away until even the microphones couldn't catch it. And then the hall did that thing he had dreamt it didn't clap at first. It absorbed. It tasted the moment. And then, like a wave hitting a seawall, the applause came back louder than it left. After the concert, Little Hands tapped his cane, asking polite and breathless, what it was made of, how heavy, how it chose where to go. Malik crouched and let them hold it. "It chooses where not to go," he said. "That's how I know where I can." Trent's father found them by the loading dock. He had coach shoulders and father eyes. "I was hard on you," he told Trent, voice rough with pride he was learning to show correctly. "I didn't know how to be proud and afraid at the same time." He turned to Malik. "You made me hear fear turn into rhythm." "Rhythm's just fear that learned to dance," Malik said, and Denise squeezed his arm so hard he squeaked. Leah clapped him on the back. "Don't get soft," she said. "We have a summer festival to apply for. You know, if you're not busy being famous." Jorge filmed, of course, capturing Denise laughing at herself trying to bow. "You bend the knees like you're greeting a tiny table," Malik coached, and she swatted his arm. On the bus home, Malik sat in his usual mid-seat. A kid in a hoodie asked if he could sit next to him. "I get dizzy sometimes," the kid whispered. "When things are loud. Your music made me think maybe I can turn it down." He took a breath. "Can I?" He gestured at the cane without touching. Malik placed it in the kid's hand. The yellow hoodie he wore caught a neon reflection from the bus ad and turned it into a small sunrise. The bus's three-tone chime buzzed its off-key E at their stop, and he grinned because imperfections were how he oriented himself. He could find home by what was a little wrong. He stepped off the bus to the city's evening, curry from the takeout place on the corner, warm bread from the bakery next to it, the bitter coffee line near the train. He catalogued them like a final coda. Denise tugged his hand. "Beans and rice tonight," she said. "Perfect," he said. "We can pay for more dreams." He pictured the auditorium on that first day and the way the sound had changed the air. He pictured Trent's careful laugh and Leah's quiet sorry and Halvorson's pencils finally imperfect. He pictured himself at the Steinway again, palms flat on the lid, hearing his own breath and other people's in the same room, different and equal. He counted one more breath, then another, then let the music he hadn't written yet begin to hum at the edge of his hearing. The city answered in E and B and the steps of people he knew and people he didn't yet, and he smiled into it because he was already playing.